It's me. Hi, everyone. My name's Jesse. I am here from the lands of the Gunner people on the Adelaide Plains and pay my respect to elders past, present and future. And also I'd like to acknowledge that this conference is taking place on Seminole land and pay my respects to their cultural custodians as well. Let's get started. Field recording, the act of making audio recordings of environmental sounds, has enjoyed a proliferation of interest and activity in the past decade, in part resulting from the accessibility of cheap portable recording devices, as well as a widening range of applications in the spaces of entertainment media, including social media, gaming and VR, and audio and video production, acoustic ecology, and ecoacoustics. Various field recorders are employed respective to their applications, such as field recorders manufactured by Zoom, sound devices and Tascam for entertainment and acoustic technology applications, and specialist recorders for ecoacoustic applications, including the bioacoustics audio recorder from Frontier Labs, the song meter recorders from by Wildlife Acoustics, and Audio Moth by Open Acoustic devices. Typically, the use of field recorders are calibrated for the intended processing or outputs. All are impacted by operational limits such as power consumption, storage capacity, and bandwidth. More specifically, entertainment and acoustic ecology projects prioritize high quality audio, so that involves obviously high sample rates, bit rates, at least stereo if not multi-channel recording, and that's intended for a human listenership. By contrast, ecoacoustics typically focuses on acoustic data as proxy for ecosystem activity and function, prioritizing outputs such as audio visualization and big data algorithmic analysis, rendering out acoustic indices and feature sets. Channel counts are also typically low. As Barclay and Gifford note, in bioacoustics, it is not uncommon to take field recordings in mono at low sampling rates for reasons both practical, cost, data storage, power consumption, bandwidth, and theoretical. Most acoustic indices and classifier algorithms are monophonic and operate in the frequency domain, so that the high sampling rates needed to encode complex spatial or reverberant information are redundant. Such outputs imply a non-human machine listenership. The accessibility, portability, and increasing usage capacity of field recorders has permitted field recording applications and methodologies that remove the need for constant human attendance, otherwise known as passive acoustic monitoring. This approach is at the heart of long-duration recording, which takes place over days, months, and years, and is called for in ecoacoustics research in order to generate acoustic data sets for seasonal and climatic modeling. It is presumed in passive acoustic monitoring practices that the use of proxies reduces observer bias in data acquisition, as well as removes the potential impact that human presence can have on non-human behavior at a particular site, allowing the possibility for a scientifically objective result. The conception of the field recorders being distinct from the field recorder proxy, the latter of which is in turn productive of the field recording, implies a Cartesian dualist model of subject, the field recordist, and object, the field recording or acoustic environment and soundscape, mediated by the apparatus of the field recorder proxy. These onto epistemological assumptions rooted in subject-object duality in turn affect ethical approaches to field recording practice, often focused on human field recordist behaviors, a position that might be redressed through the lens of post-humanist lenses, such as that offered by Karen Barad's Agential Realist project. Sorry, I'm looking at this on my phone, so give me a moment to switch over. In their seminal book, Meeting the Universe Halfway, philosopher-physicist Karen Barad proposes Agential Realism, an ethico-onto-epistemological, or rather a theory of acting, being, and knowing, paradigm intended to critique the material-discursive practices not only of the sciences, but broader socio-cultural and political institutions and systems. Agential realism posits that agency is not an attribute possessed by discrete entities, but rather it emerges through interaction, a neologism signifying mutual constitution of entangled agencies, contrasting with interaction, in which distinct agencies precede their engagement with one another. Barad holds that reality comprises of phenomena, the ontological inseparability of agential interacting components and apparatuses, which are material discursive conditions of possibility for determinate boundaries and properties of objects and meanings of embodied concepts within the phenomenon. Material discursive reconfigurations emerge from interactions between phenomena and apparatuses, resulting in agential cuts, causal interactions between apparatus and phenomena, in which marks are left on bodies. Bodies differentially materialize as particular patterns of the world, result in the specific cuts and reconfigurings that are enacted. Barad offers additional readings of apparatuses in that they, one, are specific material discursive practices. They are not merely laboratory setups that embody human concepts and take measurements. Two, they produce differences that matter. They are boundary-making practices that are formative of matter and meaning, productive of and part of phenomena produced. Three, they are material configurations, dynamic reconfigurations of the world. Four, are themselves phenomena, constituted and dynamically reconstituted as part of the ongoing interactivity of the world. Five, have no intrinsic boundaries but are open-ended practices. And six, are not located in the world but are material configurations or reconfigurations of the world that reconfigure spatiality and temporality as well. The traditional notion of dynamics, i.e. they don't exist in static structures, nor do they merely unfold or evolve in space and time. In the traditional Cartesian dualist subject-object understanding of field recording practice, the subject is identified as the human field recordist, or by proxy, and also recognized as the apparatus, the field recorder. The object is the field recording rendered from the acoustic environment or soundscape. An agential realist account of field recording, by contrast, offers multiple diffractive readings of these terms, revealing a complex enmeshment of interactions between recordist, recorder, and recording. Considering each of Barad's interpretations of the apparatus above, field recording practices themselves are apparatuses involving mutual material discursive interactions between the phenomena of recordist, recorder, and recording. Field recording practices are productive of the soundscape phenomenon. The use of a field recorder, like a human recordist, implies the occupation of a distinct locus in an environment that receives sound according to its configuration and environmental surroundings, thereby engendering a perspectival bias or agential cuts, wherein recordings are framed as reconfigurations of acoustic environments. Such framing denotes boundary-making practices. Responding to Tim Ingold's critical essay against soundscape, Helmreich's Listening Against Soundscape draws attention to the role of technological invention and intervention in enabling the soundscape concept, which regards sound as an aesthetic and conceptual remove. Telephony, phonography, and architectural acoustics permit sound to be apprehended as an abstraction. The soundscape is a back formation from such technologies, an after effect rather. Resultant abstracted definitions, such as the ecoacoustic understanding of soundscape as the distribution of sounds across a landscape when the landscape is considered a geographic entity, have the potential to neglect the inherent perspectival and boundary-making practices involved in listening and field recording. 3. As noted in number 2, field recording practices capture and render recorded sound as an object, dynamically reconfiguring sound from an ephemeral acoustic phenomenon into a replicable audio object. Recordings are thus reconfigured bodies of the acoustic environment, resulting from agential cuts made in the recording process. The equipment used, such as microphones, recorders, storage systems, file formats and compression, bit rates, sample rates, and also associated decisions made by the recordist, including the number of devices, the time of the recording initiation, duration of the recording, the location of the recorder, direction of microphones, amongst many others. Additionally, agential cuts are made through the transductive process of acoustic environmental sound into kinetic and electromagnetic energy in the microphone, to analog to digital signal conversion in the recorder, to audiovisual data representation for computer analysis and high fidelity representation. This, quote, transmutation and conversion of signals across media, when accomplished seamlessly, can produce a sense of effortless presence. Number 4, field recording practices employ material recording systems and analytical hardwares and softwares, reconfigured in their various aspects in interaction with humans, non-humans, and broader socio-cultural, economic, and political forces. Number 5, field recording practices are necessarily open-ended and adaptable practices which are reconfigured as appropriate to the objectives of the project. Different recording equipment and settings are required for different environments and research. And lastly, 6, Field recording practices as shifting and dynamic apparatuses and phenomena interacting with broader sociocultural and political perspectives have been productive of reconceptualizations of sound and recording. For example, Pierre Schaeffer's reduced listening, Barry Truax's ideas on acoustic communication, Atali's commentary on sound and politics, reconfiguring new modes and means of acoustic engagement with environments and their related spatiotemporal circumstances. Agential realism also offers novel perspectives on the situation of agency, wherein it is a matter of interacting. It is an enactment, not something that someone or something has. It cannot be designated as an attribute of subjects and objects, as they do not pre-exist as such. It is not an attribute whatsoever. Agency is doing or being in its interactivity. It is the engagement of iterative change to particular practices, interactive reconfiguring of topological manifolds of space, time, matter relations through the dynamics of interactivity. Agency is about changing possibility of change entailed in reconfiguring material discursive apparatuses of bodily production, including the boundary articulations and exclusions that are marked by those practices in the enactment of a causal structure. As such, the agency of field recording practices rests not exclusively on a human operator or listener, but emerges in interaction between field recordist, recorder, recording, and recording environment, entangled in material discursive processes that dynamically reconstitute and reconfigure in their spatiotemporal unfolding. Agency thus emerges for the human field recordist in their interaction with field recorder, place, ecosystem, and soundscape. Non-human agency is accounted for both in the abiotic, the field recorder, recordist, and recording environment mutually interacting and with the recordist, as well as with the biotic, whose agency emerges in interaction with their environment and ecological resources, as per the Umwelt and eco-field hypothesis, and also with the recordist and recorder. The recording, the soundscape, emerges through the entangled song and dance of field recording practices and their attendant phenomena. Returning to the issue of passive acoustic monitoring, an agential realist account of field recording practices problematizes claims of the objectivity of recordings. The field recordist is always implicated in the act of recording, even when not attending the field recorder. Experimental design and intended outcomes, recorder setups, settings and operation, the flux of the environment, sociocultural political discourse, all are enmeshed and enact myriad agential cuts that are productive of the final recording output. Recordings, whether passive or otherwise, are thus never truly objective and always bear the marks, or rather are constituted of the marks, of the agencies at play in the field recording process. In reframing the relationship between field recordist, recorder, and recording away from a dualist model to that of a agential realist account, an alternative foundation for field recording ethics may emerge. Recognizing agency is not possessed by or rests in the human field recordist exclusively, but rather emerges through interaction between multiple constitutive phenomena in field recording practices, repositions the locus of behavioral concern. Consideration of non-humans, inclusive of living beings, machines, artificial intelligence, and discursive forces, all should factor into a revised ethics for field recordings, recognizing the profound entangled relationships emerging from recording activity. This being said, far from lessening or abdicating the responsibility, the field recorders should recognize that they are always part of the apparatus, their production implicated through interaction with multiple other material discursive agencies in the field recording process. Recording preparation matters. Traveling to site matters. Assembling the recording equipment and calibrating settings matters. Pressing record matters. Playback matters. Listening matters. Recording is never passive, but rather an interconnected means by which we might reconfigure the dynamic unfolding of our world through acoustic transduction. Through acoustic transduction, in turn informing what it means and matters to hear, to listen, to respond, to be. Thanks, folks. Yeah, Chad. Sure. So from Barad is quite complex, as you would appreciate from the way that they write. As I understand it, agential cuts refers to the markings that occur or cuts that occur that produce the definition of phenomenon in that interaction. So in terms of the meeting together, there's kind of markings that occur in that meeting, and that's what provides the definition of the phenomena distinct from one another. Well, it can be material, it can be semiotic, it can be, yeah, and that's what they refer to as material discursive. It's this complex enmeshment of mattering, the physical world, but also the discursive, all of the kind of meanings and relationships that that also at play. Claude? Sure. So the question was, I'm sorry, I forgot to relay Chad's question. Chad's question, which I just responded to, was defining what an agential cut means. Claude's question was providing a distinction between a Cartesian recording setup and an agential realist setup. I suppose it's how you conceptualize it. Conventionally, I would say that you have the field recordist, who would be understood as the subject, who's doing the listening, doing the recording. Their proxy is then, and this is enabled by the conception of passive acoustic monitoring, where you can leave the recorder out in the field, and so it acts on your behalf as subject, and microphones also are listening, right? So the subject is comprised of that recordist, recorder kind of relationship there, and then the object is the sound or the acoustic kind of that is intended to be captured and rendered into an object. With an agential realist perspective, there's a displacement of those, or a deconstruction of that subject-object relationship, whereby each of these distinct phenomena are mutually kind of giving rise to one another. So the field recordist isn't a recordist without the recorder or the recording, and similarly, the recording device through consensus has been developed and materialized in order to produce the recording. Over the past century, we found ways of rendering a recording, first through the phonograph, and now it's through digital technologies. And so that kind of continuous reconfiguration of the recorder is as a result of finding ways to achieve the end result in that kind of backwards kind of interaction, as well as then what it means to be a field recordist as well. So it's just displacing the agency away from a possessed attribute of the human exerting their will on non-human, whether abiotic, as in non-living or living beings, and instead distributing or repositioning that out into these sort of human and non-human relations, both material, the physical, but also discursive, the kind of, discussion and semiotics in that.